What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and in this video we will be talking about two of my favorite ongoing anime and manga, along with of course Attack on Titan and a few others, My Hero Academia or Boku no Hero, and the 7 Deadly Sins or Nanatsu no Taizai. As I've been watching the anime and reading the manga for both series, I've noticed that even though they are both popular shonen franchises with fantastical elements, they are actually very different in terms of their approach to the story and the characters. But even though they are different, both approaches work really well, and both series have attracted a large audience for that reason. Even though they follow a very different structure, both series are great at what they do. And in this video I will explain how the two series differ but still manage to be awesome in their own way. Feel free to give me your thoughts about My Hero Academia and the 7 Deadly Sins down in the comments. And after watching this video, be sure to check out Nuxtaku's new video comparing Meliodas from the 7 Deadly Sins and Kirito from Sword Art Online. Nux and I worked on both of these videos together, so his video is like a companion video to this one. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this one, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and Detroit smash that notification bell. And we post daily content on Twitter and Instagram, so be sure to follow us at Anime Uproar. Now, of course, the overall setting and story of Boku no Hero and 7 Deadly Sins is very different, as is to be expected from two different franchises. So that's not what I'll be looking into here. The first major thing that I want to talk about is the protagonist or main character in both series, and how vastly different Deku and Meliodas are as characters. Both of these series have a very large cast of characters, and as the story develops, you could argue that more than one protagonist emerges. But for now, let's talk about Deku and Meliodas as the clear main protagonists in the early parts of the story. When we first meet Deku, he is a boy who desperately wants to become a hero. But in a world where the vast majority of people have quirks or special abilities that allow them to do extraordinary things, Deku is quirkless. He is often put down and mocked by others because of his lack of any special abilities. And in that sense, we could say that he is an underpowered protagonist. Deku is an underdog, and that has its own unique appeal. Those of us watching or reading the manga obviously don't have quirks, and we've all been underdogs at some point in our lives, so it is easy to relate to Deku. It's easy to put ourselves in his shoes, and you can't help but admire his ambition and determination to still become a great hero, despite not even having a quirk. It makes sense for someone with an insanely powerful quirk like Bakugo to want to test his strength, train his abilities, and become a hero. But an underdog like Deku going up against far stronger opponents and still refusing to give up is definitely something to admire. Now, of course, many people have argued that once he receives One for All from All Might, Deku suddenly goes from an underdog to being overpowered. And while I can see the logic behind that, we also have to remember that Deku needs to go through a lot of pain and suffering in order to learn to use his quirk. So this power isn't just handed to him like that guy in Isekai wa Smartphone. All 7 magical powers, really? With Deku as the protagonist, we, the viewers and readers, get to go on his journey along with him from the very beginning. We see him rise from an underdog to a contender, we see him train to get stronger, we see him evolve as a person, and so on. And if this is a formula that works as far as shonen protagonists go, then how can 7 Deadly Sins possibly be good? Meliodas and Deku couldn't be more different. When we first meet Meliodas, we think he is just a harmless, fun-loving owner of the Borhat bar. But that lasts for less than one episode before we learn that he is actually the captain of the 7 Deadly Sins. And the 7 Deadly Sins are among the strongest warriors in all of Britannia. At the end of episode 1, we already get a glimpse of Meliodas' incredible power as he easily defeats Apprentice Holy Knight Lord Twigo, the kind of man that only his own mother and Nuxtaku could love. As the series goes on, we realize that not only is Meliodas insanely powerful and, let's face it, overpowered compared to the vast majority of the opponents he faces, but he is also over 3,000 years old, so unlike Deku, we don't meet Meliodas anywhere near the beginning of his journey. So how can Meliodas possibly be a good protagonist if we can't relate to him? We, the viewers and readers, are nowhere near that strong or that old. Clearly, Meliodas is a completely different type of shonen protagonist from Deku, but he is still a great protagonist. Maybe it's because I'm no longer in high school or because I just have my own unique tastes, but it actually took me quite a while to warm up to Deku as a good protagonist. However, with Meliodas, I loved the guy right away. In the beginning of the Boku no Hero story, we can tell that Deku is a good guy, but we spent a lot of time watching him deal with being an underdog, struggling, crying, and so on. This is something that we've seen many times before in anime. Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion and Renton from Eureka 7 come to mind right away. And of course, Ash whenever he is trying to give away another one of his Pokemon. So when I first started watching Boku no Hero, I was under the impression that Deku isn't a very unique character, just a stereotypical underdog protagonist. I changed my mind about that once I read the manga and saw Deku really develop as a character. But I was fascinated by Meliodas' character right from the very beginning. I loved the twist at the end of the first episode and the first chapter where we learned that this small, carefree guy with an over-the-top sense of humor is actually the captain of the 7 deadly sins. Instead of watching him go from an underdog to a great warrior, when we meet Meliodas, he is already one of the greatest warriors in the world. And yet, the 7 Deadly Sins still manages to be a great story. That's because even though the protagonist is overpowered, the story stays interesting. The plot is not about watching the main character train and grow step by step, but rather it is about a quest. And the first important quest is to reunite all the members of the 7 Deadly Sins. Since every member of the 7 Deadly Sins is very strong, it is still interesting to see all of them interacting with Meliodas. And I especially love the relationship between Meliodas and Ban. The interesting thing about Meliodas is not seeing how he goes from weak to strong, but rather the mystery of how he became so strong in the first place. Nevertheless, getting stronger or powering up is an important shonen trope. And the way that the 7 Deadly Sins includes this trope is by making Meliodas a demon who at times loses control of his power, which makes him stronger but also more dangerous. On top of that, we later learn that the vast majority of Meliodas' power has been sealed away in order to prevent him from losing control. And so once he retrieves this power, he is able to power up even more. You might think that having such an OP protagonist would make the show boring since he'll have no trouble with any villain. But by adding this dimension that Meliodas has to fight against himself and his own demonic nature, and by introducing extremely strong villains later on in the series, including the 10 Commandments who had been sealed away in the Coffin of Eternal Darkness for 3,000 years, the story of the 7 Deadly Sins stays interesting. Even though Meliodas is incredibly strong, as are the other members of the 7 Deadly Sins, they still face major challenges, both in terms of their own inner demons, pun intended, and in terms of outside threats like the 10 Commandments. Beyond just Meliodas and Deku, the different approaches to character development in the two series follow a similar pattern. In Boku no Hero, most of the main cast are relatively normal high school students, so they are all young. Their journey is just beginning, and there isn't too much that the series can do in terms of complex backstories. Don't get me wrong, some of the characters do have interesting backstories, including Shoto Todoroki in particular. But most of the main cast in the 7 Deadly Sins are much older. The youngest members of the 7 Deadly Sins are in their 40s, while others are hundreds and even thousands of years old. So of course, the 7 Deadly Sins has a lot more room to explore the rich histories and backstories of its characters, whereas Boku no Hero has to focus mostly on the present. That's not to say that one of these approaches is good and the other is bad, they are just different. I absolutely love that in the 7 Deadly Sins, a lot of time is spent on the backstories of the characters, which gives us a better understanding of them as people and allows us to see their progression. On the other hand, in Boku no Hero, we get to see the personalities of the characters being shaped in real time, in the present moment. And this is extremely compelling as well. You feel like you are growing up together with these characters instead of getting to know them when they are fully formed adults, which allows us to connect with them on another level. And this is what I find so interesting. These two series take very different approaches to character development, including the protagonist and main character himself, and yet I really enjoy both of them because they are great at what they do. We are introduced to the important characters in completely different ways, but in both cases the characters are compelling enough for us to feel a connection to them. The story moves forward without becoming stale because of the excellent world building and character development. And whether we're looking at the mystery of what happens next to Deku and how he becomes the greatest hero, or the mystery of what really happened in the Holy War 3,000 years ago, in each case the mystery draws us in and keeps us guessing. The manga for both series is far ahead of the anime, and as I am caught up to both of them, I can tell you that neither series has gotten less interesting as time goes on. If anything, both manga have gotten better after the events that are covered in the first season of the anime. And I can't wait to see how some of the upcoming arcs are going to be adapted in anime form. But that is all from me on this topic. Let me know what you guys think. Do you enjoy both of these series despite the fact that they are so different? And do you happen to prefer one over the other? If so, let me know why down below. I always love hearing from you. Don't forget to check out Nuxtaku's new video comparing Meliodas and Kirito. As I said, we worked on both of these videos together, so his video is like a companion video to this one. If you enjoyed this type of comparison video and you want to see more in the future, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and Detroit smash that notification bell. And be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!